Hello everyone, welcome you to Aurora. So I hope these days you're getting ready for your upcoming examinations. Today we are going to revise the poem Funeral Blues by W.H. Auden. So first of all, I would like to read the poem so that you will remember the lines in it. Funeral Blues by W.H. Auden. Stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone, prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone. Silence the pianos and with muffled drum, bring out the coffin, let the mourners come. Let aeroplanes circle mourning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message he is dead. Put creep boughs round the white necks of the public doves. Let the traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. The stars are not wanted now. Put out everyone. Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. Pour away the ocean and sweep up the wood, for nothing now can ever come to any good. So if you really look at this poem, the main theme of the poem is grief and isolation. Let's go line by line so that we'll be able to identify the meaning of each line as well as its both explicit and implicit meanings. So stop or look at them, stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone. So look at how the poem is starting. Stop all the clocks. Start with the imperative verb, asking to stop the clocks. So the poem begins with the speaker making a series of urgent requests. The speaker wants to stop the clocks, to turn off the telephone, to give the dog a juicy bone, to keep it from barking, and to silence the pianos. So many of these requests are actually symbolic. For instance, when the speaker asks to stop all the clocks, the speaker is really asking to stop time itself, if I'm right. The telephone, meanwhile, might represent a modern life and then business. The speaker isn't asking to cut off a specific telephone, but all telephones. So, and with them, there are constant stream of interruptions and information. Finally, the piano symbolize, parties and celebrations, entertainment. Overall, then, the speaker is asking for a moment of peace and stillness, free from distractions and noises, a moment of serious reflection. And also in line number 3 and 4, silence the pianos with muffled drum, bring out the coffin, let the mourners come. So it becomes clear why the speaker wants this. Someone important to the speaker has died. So it's possible to read this as a literal death or as a metaphor for the end of an important relationship. However, the speaker is asking the rest of the world to mourn with the speaker, to acknowledge the magnitude of this loss. But the fact that the speaker has to ask for the clocks to stop and the telephones to be cut suggests that the world hasn't stopped to accommodate the speaker's grief. Or in other words, the speaker is heartbroken and the world seems indifferent to the speaker's grief. It keeps moving along business as usual. As such, the speaker feels isolated and demands that the world slow down, stop, and bring itself in line with the speaker's grief. The first 4 lines also establish the poem's form. The poem is written, you can see, in quatrains. It has 4 quatrains. So each with 4 lines. Each quatrain is composed of 2 rhyming couplets like drum and come, overhead and jet, right? Creating an AABB rhyme scheme. And the poem uses meter, but its meter, shifts around unpredictably. For example, line number 1, 3, and 4 are basically written in iambic pentameter, but it shifts around unpredictably because in line number 2, probably best thought of as being iambic hexameter. So recall that an iamb is a poetic unit with, the jar-jump stress pattern, and pentameter has 5 amps per line, while hexameter has 6. However, there are also lots of metrical substitutions throughout. The first line, for instance, opens with a spondy. You know what a spondy is, stressed and stressed, or we could say a trochee, stressed, unstressed, depending on how it's read. However, either of the way, this adds extra emphasis to the speaker's, request. As is clear above, the meter definitely is not regular. However, you need to notice that, for instance, line number 3 actually opens with a very ductile, a stressed, unstressed, unstressed, a kind of a meter. Skipping on to the other lines, let's move on to the second stanza. Let aeroplanes circle morning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message he is dead. But could creep bows round the white neck of the public douse, let the traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. So the first 4 lines of the poem establish a tension between the speaker and the rest of the world. And the speaker is grieving the death, metaphorical or literal, of someone important and wants quiet and peace to do so. But the world keeps on turning, as I said before, with its, barking dogs and ringing telephones. So here the speaker continues to lay out requests or demands to the world, like describing how the world should grieve alongside the speaker. In line number 5 and 6, you can see that the speaker asks for aeroplanes to announce the sad news, writing in the sky that he is dead. So the speaker describes the airplanes as mourning to the speaker. Even their engines sound mournful and sad. And also you can see that line number 5 is enjambed. One of only 2 enjambments in the entire poem, like the other enjambment in line number 3. So this one comes at a key moment when the speaker is directly discussing the death of whomever the speaker is mourning. So just talking about that death, even if it's only a metaphorical death, is enough to disrupt the otherwise steady and stops and, throw the poem out of alignment quite briefly. Moving on to line number 7 and 8. The speaker, you see, issues 2 more requests. The speaker wants the public douse, that means the pigeons, to wear black bows around their necks, a kind of a sign of respect for the dead, And the speaker also wants the traffic policemen to wear black cotton gloves, is another sign of respect. However, you see the speaker wants the whole world, from animals to human beings, to openly acknowledge the speaker's grief. So those are also often symbols of peace. So the speaker doesn't just want the annoying or loud parts of the world to slow down and stop, but also wants things that symbolize peace to join this mourning. So moving on to the third stanza. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. So in line number 9 to 12, what happens is the speaker switches things up, right? Instead of asking for peace and quiet from the world, the speaker describes the person that the speaker is mourning. And there are references. The speaker describes or specifically uses a series of metaphors to explain how much that person mattered to the speaker. So in line number 9, the speaker says that this person whom the speaker simply calls he, was all the cardinal directions: my north, my south, my east, and my west. In other words, he was the speaker's whole world. So the repetition of my here underscores the intense connection between the speaker and this person. And also in the next couple of lines, you see the speaker adds to this: he was also the speaker's whole week, Monday through Sunday, noon and night. So he was everything the speaker talked about and sang about. And this stanza is really evoking the intimacy, the intimate feelings. And also, moving on to in one more line, the writer says, I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. So in one way, you notice that the speaker feels kind of deceived because the speaker has thought that love would last forever, but it seems that she could not keep him forever. So whoever this person was, he was in a way so important to the speaker, but at the same time, the speaker has never considered that their love could end. But now that he is gone, the speaker admits that she was wrong about this. So in one way, the speaker has learned that love is impermanent, capable of changing, decaying, and dying. So this line supports the sense that the death the speaker describes is kind of metaphorical rather than literal. It sounds more like the, complaint of a heartbroken lover than a grieving family member. In other words, it suggests that the speaker is using death as a metaphor to describe the end of a relationship. And the final stanza: the stars are not wanted now. Put out everyone. So the speaker starts making requests and demands again, but they look very unnatural now. The tone of the demands has really changed. Right? In the early parts of the poem, the speaker asks the world to be respectful and quiet, to mourn with the speaker. But then in these lines, the speaker seems more desperate, right? The speaker asks for the stars to be put out. In other words, for their lights to be turned off. And also you need to notice that stars are often symbols for guidance and hope. So the speaker seems to want to give up all hope, all possibility of escaping from this grief. Indeed, the speaker wants the world itself to end. And you notice that the speaker wants the moon and the sun to be taken down from the sky. How unrealistic is it? And the speaker wants the world's oceans to be drained, its forests to be swept away. So these are not really literal requests. Again, the speaker is using metaphors to say that without this person whom the speaker loved, it isn't worth continuing to live. Because as the speaker announces in the poem's final line, nothing now can ever come to any good. So, in other words, the speaker doesn't think that anything will ever turn out well again. So the bleak despair of the line is once again reinforced by the consonant N sounds that runs through it. It was like, nothing, now, can. These sounds, bind together, nothing, can, and thus emphasizes the speaker's sense that there are no good possibilities left, like the world has come to an end for her. So if you really look at this poem, you will notice that there are symbols, such as the clocks, the telephone, the pianos, the stars, the doves, and we just talked about their symbolical value. So basically, I want you to notice that Funeral Blues is a poem, about the heartbreak, grief, loss, and how these feelings can really make people feel isolated and out of sync with the world around them. Sometimes it's, possible to interpret the loss at the heart of the poem in, several ways. As I said before, it could be that the speaker have really lost somebody that she loved because the person has actually died, or maybe it could be the end of a romantic relationship where the separation is compared to death. However, you need to notice that the speaker of funeral blues has clearly lost someone important. So the poem's title even suggests that someone has literally died. So it's not easy for all of us to bear with grief, loss, so that this is the very natural feelings of anybody who would have gone through a loved one's death. And also you need to notice the realistic demands and the unrealistic demands, and how, as the poem continues, this sadness, her misery, her suffering is getting more and more deepened. And especially I want you to once again look at the demands, because the demands reveal to the reader that the speaker doesn't want to grieve alone. Sometimes when we are sad, we need other people to show some empathy for us, to understand our grief, sometimes to share it. So the speaker wants the rest of the world to acknowledge and reflect the magnitude of the speaker's loss. Therefore, this poem suggests that whether you have lost a loved one or had your heart broken, part of what makes grief so terrible and so hard to endure is the isolation that it creates, right? The grief causes a very painful separation between the world, which is indifferent and unconcerned, and the person who grieves. So more broadly, the poem speaks to the overwhelming, all-encompassing nature of grief, which can make it feel like the world itself has ended, and that, as the poet says at the end, nothing now can ever come to any good. And if you really look at the poetic techniques used by the writer, you may notice that there are certain possessive pronouns to show the sort of, belongingness, a sense of possession. And also there are enjambments, caesuras, for example, stop all the clocks. And then there is a pause, a cut off the telephone. So there we notice a caesura. And then there is the rhyme pattern. The poem is written in 4 quatrains. And at the same time, there are alliterations used. For example, here the alliteration helps, bind the poem together, like the K sound, stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone, bring out the coffin, let the mourners come. You can hear the K sound time to time. And also you can hear in other places like clocks, barking, traffic, necks, circle, you can hear hard K sounds. Other than that, you also have, symbols. We talked about the values of symbols before. And the whole poem can be understood as a metaphor. But other than that, there are other metaphors like, my north, my south, my east, my west, the kind of the cardinal directions. And like pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. It's also kind of a metaphor. This isn't literally possible, So it's a metaphor for the speaker's desire. The speaker doesn't want the world to keep going, doesn't want the sun and the moon to keep rising and setting day after day. So this is somewhat amalgamating with the fact that the time should be stopped so that the sun and the moon will not be anymore shining in the sky. The whole world has to come to a stop. Well, so this is all about it. Actually, and one last word about the setting of this poem. It could be identified as a very universal experience, the sense of isolation from the world that follows a serious loss. So, and in the absence of a specific setting, the poem feels very universal, like it could describe anyone's experience in any place and any time. So as I said before, it's a very universal poem rather than a very unique poem. So I hope that this discussion, this explanation helped you somewhat to cope up with your upcoming examination. So I would like to display 2 more slides for you, and then we'll come to a stop. So this poem is an expression of grief and heartache. The speaker describes his pain and links his overwhelming emotion of despair to the world around him. And also the reference to clocks, telephone, and dog and pianos examine the mourner's reaction to his immediate domestic surrounding through the lens of loss. The poem then expands the surroundings to more public arena. So moving from domestic surroundings to public arena is a kind of an expansion with aeroplanes, doves, traffic policemen, and finally ends in the universal sphere of stars, moon, sun, ocean, and wood. So this slowly, this gradual expansion of space can also be identified as the writer's gradual expansion of grief. And other than that, you will also notice that the third stanza describes their special relationship and gives a very personal account of what the dead man meant to the speaker. It's also clear from the outset what the subject of the poem will be, with the title The Funeral Blues, that, especially the word blue is very much related, has the connotations to sadness, misery, suffering, sense of loss, separation. The choice of the word blues is an effective one, as this could refer to a depressed mood and also describes a slow, sad musical piece. And for example, if you can remember Elvis Presley's song, I Had a Blue Christmas Without You. So blue is, once again, showing sadness. The reader immediately understands the call for everything to cease, time, noise, music, everything should cease to come to a stop as soon as the reference is made to the coffin and the mourners. So the stark message, he is dead, to be written on the sky for all to see implies the speaker's need for the world around him to register the passing of the beloved. And basically, these are the things I just wanted to talk to you about. So I have also just showed you one slide showing the importance of the title, whereas the funeral refers to death, farewell, blues is a reference to sadness and a kind of music. And the whole poem can be considered a kind of an elegiac poem or an elegy because it focuses on death. It's written to mourn on the death of somebody. Right, so that's all for today. I hope that this discussion really helped you. If you have any questions, you can mention in the chat. Right, so I wish you all the very best for your upcoming examinations. Take care, best of luck, and have a good day.